Welcome, everyone. How is everyone doing this morning? Good. I am excited to be here with you guys and gals. And I want you to feel good about what you're going to hear today, because what you're going to hear has helped some companies learn how not to use their insurance. Let me repeat that, how not to use your insurance. Now, I'm going to tell you later on a company who actually profited $250,000, saved $250,000 in profit. And that impact to his company had the same impact as adding over $13 million to their top line. Now, today's topic, accidents waiting to happen. Eric, loved your presentation. 5 cautionary mistakes leaders make that kill profitability. And that is the message and purpose of my presentation today. And I believe in teaching people how to insulate their companies from risk and losses that cause their money to go up in flames. And I want to share some tips, tools, and ideas and insights with you today that you can hopefully take back with you and use hopefully in the weeks and months to come. Now, I'd like to keep today interactive. We'll be asking you some questions along the way. Would like to just have you play along. Obviously, the more you put into something, I think the more you get out of it. But I want to jump right into the program right now and show you a quick 30-second training video with a lot of safety-minded individuals here in the audience. I figure many of you will probably have a good opinion or have an opinion on what could be done to make this job site safer. I want everyone to pay attention because we're going to have a very, very quick discussion afterwards. Oops. That's going to leave a mark. Any questions? Enough said, right? Well, let's get right into the heart and meat of our program and say that in a study that was conducted in February 2014 by Heart Research Institute, they said that American businesses today, 86%, felt that the world was getting riskier. Now, I don't know about you. I'm a little curious about the 14% who thought maybe the world wasn't getting riskier. But nonetheless, they interviewed 1,100 business owners from small, medium, and large companies to find out what was on their mind, what concerned them, what kept them up at night. And what was interesting was they aggregated the information into 7 concerns. And 3 of the top vote getters were, number 1, people's concern for liability for workers' comp. Claims are on the rise, and we're going to talk about that in our program today. Cyber liability. Who here hasn't had the touch of a computer virus or had your account hacked in some way? It's even happening to the big boys, the Sonys of the world, the Targets of the world. And it was reported that the cost of a cyber breach to the small business owner was about $8,700 in 2013. In 2014, that number skyrocketed to over just under $21,000. Huge. And we cannot escape the huge impact and reach that our current administration has had on health care. Medical cost inflation is huge. But today we're going to be talking about something that I think is an American classic in business today. Talking about workers' comp administration. And we're going to talk about getting back to the basics of blocking and tackling and things and insights that you can do back at your offices to keep your companies more profitable. Now, a little bit about myself. I'm known as America's Risk Reduction Authority. As a professional, I have been in the industry for over 30 years as a claims adjuster, in loss control, and as a broker. And all of that has given me an excellent technical foundation for the consulting work that I do today. I'm the creator of the Diamond Risk Reduction System, which predictably has been able to reduce the number of claims that companies have in excess of 50%, generally in less than 12 months. And I'm proud to say the system has actually gone viral across the country and even been cited in the media. About 5 years ago, I was teaching a program called Keys for Profitability in the New Economy. And in that, I was teaching people risk reduction strategies. And because of the success that people were having with those strategies, I had a number of people over time tell me, you know, Rick, you ought to write a book on this stuff. So I did. In 2013, ended up with Accidents Waiting to Happen, a book on best practices in workers' comp administration and protecting corporate profitability. And I'm proud to say it actually became a bestseller in the first 2 weeks of distribution. Became a #1 bestseller in March of last year. Now, I say that not to impress you, but to impress upon you that I have an absolute passion in how I see my work. A philosophy that comes from not only my work, but comes from the greatest role model in my life. It was my dad. He's a very genuine, very sincere man. He was a family practice doctor. And people absolutely loved him because he cared about his people, he was focused on results, and was all about doing the right thing. And he would always tell me, Rick, make sure that you care about what you do and be helpful and relevant to the people that you serve. And that mentorship helped me evolve into the forensic risk consultant that I am today. And my sincerest hope is I can give you some insights today that you can hopefully take back with you and use in the weeks and months to come. Now, if I share something with you today that resonates with you and you would like more information, you can engage me or my staff in any 1 to 3 programs. First one is the Silver program. It talks about the risk score and a strategy session to help you learn that. And it's absolutely 100% complimentary for those here today. My other 2 programs, the Gold and Platinum programs, are simply my consulting programs. We can talk about those later. Enough about me. Let's talk about helping you. Now, you're in the right place if you've ever been frustrated with the workers' comp claim that you knew was costing your company a lot of money. And many times you felt very controlled by them. And we all know that losses and claims, lawsuits, they're just an unfortunate part of business. And many of you tried your level best to try to control them, but you've only had marginal success in being able to do that. And some of you have tried so many things that it's just gotten frustrating to you, and you're just so ready to be able to find predictable systems that can help you in delivering those consistent results. Now, what you're going to learn today is the financial impact that losses have on your bottom line, and why some companies never really create sustainable income, and what you can do to change that. We're going to talk about the 5 mistakes that leaders make in regards to claims and lawsuits. And lastly, we'll share with you how you can gain peace of mind by knowing what your blind spots are, the ones that are costing you productivity and costing you money. But let me start by talking about why I think risk management is an absolute secret weapon for your business. And I say it's a secret weapon for your business because it really involves 3 things that any key business leader really should be concentrating on. Number 1, having the money that you save putting risk management in place can help you in funding the goals that you may be having for your company. And we're going to talk about your company goals here in just a moment. And in the CEO forums that I'm involved with, I hear a consistent theme from business leaders saying that they want to have and create sustainable income, sustainable growth. They want sustainability. No one wants to be a flash in the pan. No one wants to take 1 step forward and 2 steps back. And who doesn't want to be competitive in your marketplace? And many times, some of the risk management strategies that you can do don't even need to cost you very much money at all in the process. Now, in my walk, let's talk about why some companies never create sustainable growth. In my walking, talking with businesses, I find that many leaders never really fully embrace and understand the financial impact that losses have on your bottom line and your top line as well. And when many talked to leaders day to day, we would ask them, listen, what's holding you back? When they'd ask me to take care of them, I'd make it a habit of asking them, what kept you from doing things? Is there something I could have told you that would have motivated you to do something sooner? And again, there was pretty much a consistent theme of people saying, I had a guy named John say, you know, Rick, if I really truly understood the impact that claims had on my company, I would have done something sooner. And then there's systems. I find many people really don't have systems in place, and it holds them back. How many of us here have heard of something that we should be doing within our company, maybe over 2 or 3 years, and we just never get it done? Has it happened to y'all? It's happened to me. Heaven knows it's happened to me. How many of us here have waited to put an alarm system in our home until after we've been robbed? Or how many of us have put in a safety program after OSHA's been breathing down our neck and passing out fines? Well, it doesn't need to be that way. And I find that success and failure leaves clues. When I've gone in and done a forensic deep dive with a company and looked at the policies and procedures that they had in place, it was clear to me that the companies who had really good risk management policies and procedures in place ended up having less claims than those who didn't. Those who didn't have, and when we talk about procedures, we're talking about more than just safety. We're talking about things that even involve how we hire in the HR process. So again, success and failure definitely leaves clues. And honestly, when you think about it, think of the cost that claims have on your company, the emotional cost, especially to you as leaders or in your organizations. Especially as they're just frustrating to have to go through to begin with. And then you've got the emotional cost of the employees. Like Eric so beautifully said earlier. What about the people who are left holding and picking up the slack for those who were injured? Again, it's expensive. And what needs to be said on productivity losses? Bottom line, if your people are not working, you're losing money. Who here, honestly, who's here had a workers' comp claim that just really frustrated you? Let me see a show of hands. Really frustrated you? Yeah, it happens an awful lot. Ever felt controlled by the system? There are ways that you can control that. And mismanaged claims. I had a guy say, don't get me started. Insurance companies are many times just like you are, with respect to the fact that after the recession, many of them are still having to do more with less people. And I will still see adjusters out there who are handling more caseloads than they can handle. And things fall through the cracks. It ends up costing your company's money. And the question is would you even know that when it actually happens? Most don't. And do you think the insurance companies have a vested interest in helping you with that? I think you can pretty much answer that question on your own. So let me tell you the story about Dave and Sandy. Ever had any one of your employees ever give you that look of frustration, that look of despair? Well, let me tell you the story about Dave. He gets in from the weekend, from a great weekend at the beach, gets in about 9 o'clock. He starts to walk back to his back corner office, and he has to go by Sandy's desk. And Sandy's got that look of frustration, that look of, oh. Dave sees that as he's walking by. He goes by her desk and says, "What's up?" Well, Sandy proceeds to say, "Dave, I've got some bad news and I've got some worse news. What would you like first?" Well, you got to know Dave. He's a bottom line kind of guy. Kind of rolls his eyes and said, "Just tell me." Well, Sandy proceeds to say, "Remember the guys that we hired a couple weeks ago, a guy named Ed? We knew he had a claim mid last week. Well, I just found out today he's suing us. He's now got an attorney." Well, as soon as Sandy said that, David's stomach went into a knot. He's saying this, because this isn't the first time this has happened to Dave. And he's thinking to himself, here we go again. Someone else trying to take advantage of us, take advantage of the system. It's frustrating. Let me give you a little bit more chemistry about this situation he was in. David just hired 20 new people to get a job started he won a couple months ago. And in the first 2 weeks of hire, one of those employees goes out and has a serious workers' comp claim. But what they learned after the fact was that one of those employees, Ed, went out and has had a series of claims and getting an attorney. Now, that claim ran about $67,000. And based on Dave's profit margin, which was about 5% at the time, he's now got to generate over $1.3 million in revenue just to break even, just to pay for that claim. Big money, right? Well, let's talk about the visions that many of you have for your companies. Each of you got here a different way. Some of your companies are growing organically. Some of you are buying companies. I know a company up in North Florida who wanted to open up new territory and add on 5 new sales reps. Needed a fleet of vehicles. It's going to cost him several $100,000 to build this portion of his business. A manufacturer successfully had 2 shifts going on, brought on a new client, and wanted to open up a 3rd shift. Another contracting client of mine had a very ambitious goal of adding on 4 new locations just in the state of Florida. Said it was going to cost him about $1.4 million to do that. So let me have you crystallize this in your mind. We all know that goals cost money. And if someone were to come into your office, your business, this coming Monday, and offer you $500,000, seriously, what would you do with the money? Have you got something in mind? If you do, write it down beside you on your sheet of paper someplace. Underline it twice. Come back to that. Never lose sight of that. Now, let's talk about the 5 costly mistakes leaders make that kill profitability. The first one is not knowing your numbers. And when I talk about not knowing your numbers, it could be a number of things. It could be your KPIs, your key performance indicators. What metrics are you using right now in measuring how your company's doing? Do you know your loss ratios? Do you know your OSHA incident rates, your DART rates? But let's just keep this simple. Talk about your number of claims that you have, your incurred losses. And as a refresher for many of you, on the loss runs that you get from a carrier, your incurred losses are what you've actually been paid from the carrier plus what they think they're going to pay, called a reserve. Well, that combined total is what they call an incurred loss. But knowing your numbers is not just it. Many of you probably have heard, I'm sure you've heard of the great management mind, Tom Peters. Tom apparently had coined the phrase, what gets measured gets done. And I'm going to take that a step further and say that you can't manage what you can't control. And you can't control what you don't measure. So it's not enough just to know your number of claims, you ought to know the analytics behind those claims. What day of week or time of day did your losses occur? Wouldn't it be interesting to know if your claims were happening on a Friday afternoon or a Monday morning? Or what about the types of claims that you're having or the body parts that are being injured? The bottom line is if you're going to invest money into a safety program, why not invest them in areas where you're having issues? And many times, just the loss reports that you get from your carriers don't really show that. That's where systems comes in. And when I talk with probably, I would say even 9 out of 10 business leaders within a company and ask them what their numbers are, I find many don't know what their numbers are. And if you're not sure, I'd make the suggestion to you when you go back is to order your loss runs and find out really what your numbers are. So let's talk about the second costly mistake leaders make, and that's not knowing their real cost of claims. And when we talk about the real cost of claims, we're talking about not only what's been paid on those claims, but we're talking about the indirect cost of those claims as well. And that picture of an iceberg has been around forever, but it's a great picture really what we're talking about here. Because many times when you think of the cost of a claim, what's been paid is really just that tip of the iceberg. The bigger cost is, again, what's below the waterline. So let me drill down this a little bit further. Who here has heard, let me see a show of hands, who here has heard of the terminology total cost of risk? Anyone? It's been around for a while. It's been around since 1974 by a guy by the name of Frank E. Bird Jr. And he had a publication that was called The Real Cost of Accidents Can Be Measured and Controlled. Now, I'd like everyone just to stop, and I want you to think about how much you think your company pays in premiums right now, and put that number in your head. Or jot it down, whatever's easiest for you. Got a number? We're talking everything, your property, liability, workers' comp, everything. Well, what the science of T-Core says is, let's say you're spending $100,000 in premium. What the science of T-Core says, if your premium was $100,000, your total cost of risk is conservatively over $1 million. which means your bigger cost to your company is not what you pay in premiums. It's what's below the waterline. How much did your last bad hire cost you? Who here has had an employee work with you for a half a year, 5, 6, 7 months, and left your company? It's happened to me. Oh, yeah, it's happened to me. Sherm, the Society of HR Managers, says if you've got someone working with you making $30,000, $35,000 a year, and they leave your company, you fire them, whatever, that employee probably cost you upwards of $70,000, $75,000. When you think about it, the cost to retrain, the cost to rehire, productivity losses, administration, again, it's extremely costly to your company. So what's the moral of the story here? When you think of risk management, think beyond what you pay in premiums. Look for resources, look for systems that can help you in shrinking down the size of the iceberg, especially what's below the waterline. Let me take this a step further and share something with you that comes out of OSHA called indirect loss cost factors. Again, indirect loss cost factors. What OSHA says is for any claim that you have, there's some very real additional costs associated with them. And they've had this for years. They say the factors range anywhere from 1.1 to 4.5. Take a $10,000 claim, conservatively, you're talking about something that's over $21,000. Let me share with you, well, first off, let me have you bear with me on this slide. I know some people hate math, but I just want to take 30 seconds and go over this with you that kind of goes over that story of Dave that I talked to you earlier about. Remember we said earlier that Dave had a claim that was about $67,000? Well, if you multiply that indirect loss cost factor of 1.1, you have indirect loss costs, as you can see there, of over $74,000. And what you simply do is you take that number and you add that to the direct cost that you have. And you end up with something called total loss costs, in his case, over $141,000. Now, I want to share with you a tool. Feel free to write that down. If you don't have a pen, I'll be glad to share it with you afterwards. But this is a great tool that you can get onto the Department of Labor, the OSHA site. They give great explanations as to what indirect loss cost factors are. You can actually take your loss runs and take your stuff through this formula. You'll find it'll be a real good eye-opening experience for you. And let me share the eye-opening experience of Robert up in North Florida. In 1 year, he had 8 claims totaling over $87,000. He paid his $12,000 in deductibles. Carrier paid the rest. And what was interesting to Robert was he figured out he had over $93,000 in additional soft costs. And Robert really wanted to understand the impact that his losses had on his company. He wanted to take the time to do this. Now, this is his math, not ours. And as you go down and look through that item, the list there, the items really should make sense to you. Fortunately, in his case, he only had just over $10,000 in attorney's fees. We will generally see $15,000, $20,000 in that area. But he had cleanup costs, loss of production. 2 of the 4 employees that he had working with him are no longer there. 1 quit, 1 he fired. And the $6,800 that he paid for those guys, all that was just money up in flames. So Robert ended up having one of those V8 moments. Kind of told us after the fact, well, when I look at the claims that we had, they didn't really need to happen. With a little bit of training, they probably could have been avoided. As I said, saving my company a ton of money in the process. So let me shift gears with you now, and let's talk about the impact that claims have on your top line, on your revenue. Well, the first thing you've got to know is what is your net profit margin as a company? In Robert's case, it was 7%. So the math is really simple, guys. You simply take the 7% and divide it into your total loss costs. Robert's now got to sell over $2.5 million worth of product and services just to pay for that. Are you with me? Big money. So let me put this in your world. For $180,000 in profits, how many hamburgers do you have to make in order to make $180,000 in profits? How many widgets do you have to manufacture? Few contractors in the group. How many bids do you have to win? And at what profit margins do you have to win by in order to pay for that? Probably an awful lot of work. So let's talk about the third costly mistakes leaders make. Not knowing their blind spots from an operational standpoint and from a safety standpoint. There you are in your red car going down the road of business. And that yellow car represents a lawsuit that's not even in your field of view. Total blind side. Extremely costly to your company. That blue car represents a workers' comp claim that you knew was there, but starts to grow legs on it. We say grow hair on it. It just starts to get out of control. Again, very frustrating. Now, if I can get you to remember just two things from today, I'd like you to remember this. If you reduce your business risk as a company, you can and will increase your profitability as a company. But number two, know your blind spots. Know your blind spots, both operationally and with safety. Number one, New York best-selling authors Larry Bossidy and Ram Charan have a book called Execution. And in their book, they make the comment that too many business leaders today feel that their companies are well run. How many here have heard this saying, sometimes we don't know what we don't know? That has been me on multiple occasions. And to me, blind spots cause claims. And from my perspective, claims are like getting mugged in an alley. And I believe in teaching people how not to get mugged. I believe in teaching people how not to use their insurance. And we'll talk about some stats here with you right now. I'm concerned for some of you here in the audience who are probably having some claims and having some frustrations with them. But I'm also concerned for some of you in the audience who may not be having claims, because you might think that you might be walking on water and might be immune from having claims. And we all know that's not the case. Now, there was a great article written back in 2010, and as it came out, I was wondering, is this going to come true? And it did. It was written by Zurich Insurance Company. Those people have more stats, I think, than the government. But they made the comment that after every recession, two things have happened every time, just like clockwork. Number one, people start to rehire again because there's more work flowing. And thank goodness we're starting to see that, right? But number two, there's always been a spike in workers' compensation claims. And that, my friends, just got validated for me in March of last year. I had an attorney friend share with me a report from the JCC, the Justice's Circuit Court, saying that there had been a 10-year downward trend in claims. Well, that trend is now stopped. It is now going the other way. And the article goes on to say, my question to you is, how well prepared are you as we've gotten through the other side? Do you have good policies and procedures in place, from what you do on the HR side to what you're doing before and after a claim? And the article goes on further to say, now is the time. Don't wait until your company gets into a feverish pitch of new business before you decide to bolster your fortress. Now is the time. Let me share with you a story about Robert, a successful manufacturer in Polk County. Been in business for 20 years, hadn't had a claim in 10 years. And then boom, gets a surprise in December with a claim that was really unexpected, and quite frankly, it was avoidable. So let's talk about some blind spots. We'll also talk about some anti-fraud tools. Let me see a show of hands here. Who here is using medical health questionnaires and conditional offers of employment letters in your hiring process? You see a show of hands. It is important, my friends, and here's why. Let me share with you the story about Andrew. 32-year-old man, needed back surgery 3 months before he was hired. And it seemed like Tom's hiring litmus test was, if you can fog a mirror, come on through. At least it seemed that way, but wasn't really. But what do you think happened in the first 3 weeks of Andrew's hire? Yeah, re-injured himself, hurt his back. Claim's going to run about $76,000. And based on his profit margin, he's got over $2 million now that he's got to sell to pay for that. So let me ask you this question. Ever hired someone today and put them on the job the next day? Don't have to admit to that. The moral of the story here is we never want to hire someone today and put them on the job tomorrow. That conditional offer of employment letter that I just talked about, that is your trigger point document that gives you the legal right to be able to ask and give people that medical health questionnaire. And if they are less than honest in completing that medical health questionnaire, you've just given yourself a get out of jail free card. How is that? Because of a court case called Martin Company versus Carpenter. This goes back to 1961, made statute in 94. It says if someone is less than honest in completing the medical health questionnaires, the carrier has the ability to deny that worker's comp claim. If that's legitimately the situation, you have saved yourself a ton of money in the process. A lot of money in the process. And one other comment about the medical health questionnaires. You want to make sure that you keep them in a separate locked cabinet away from all your other HR paperwork, just to make sure that you're in compliance with HIPAA, okay? So let's talk about some other blind spots called anti-fraud tools. Many of you are familiar with pre-employment background checks. I'm sure some of you are doing them. It's a good thing. Let's say in David's case, some of you are probably aware that we're blessed in the state of Florida. You can actually go online and see if the person that you're hiring is that proverbial worm in the apple. Would have been a great thing for Dave to have done. If he had gone online, he would have seen that Ed had a history of claims. Motor vehicle reports. I trust that many of you are probably doing them. I hope that you are. Explain why you'd want to do that. Through a legal terminology called negligent entrustment. If you're not doing that, the legal community will have an absolute tap dance on your head if you're not testing out people. If you're entrusting your employees to the public, that's the precedent that they use to win very good lawsuits. And then there's character assessments. Many of you are probably familiar with something called personality profiling. It's done. Now it's a good thing to do. Has a 96% accuracy rating. A lot of people don't do it many times because of cost. But there's something that's been extremely successfully being used now in the last 5 years called integrity testing. It's being used because it's pretty scary accurate. It helps figure out and ferret out those people who suffer from a condition called cognitive dissonance. What in the world is that? That's when someone's behavior is not in alignment with their value structure, whatever's in their head, what's going on in there. And it has a way of finding out if those people have a propensity for theft, for drug use, for violence. I understand one of our speakers today is going to be talking about violence. It can even test for those people who are trying to beat the test itself and find out those people who what I would call are sleepers in your company. These are the people who have been with you a couple of years, but when they have their first claim, they're going to absolutely want the red carpet mapped out for you, increasing your cost of claims. Again, something you may want to keep in mind. Now let's talk about the fourth costly mistake leaders make, not having systems. And not really involving your team as well in this process. There was a Dr. George Weathersby. He's got more acronyms behind his name than I could read off to you in a minute. But he had coined the phrase that ordinary people can perform extraordinarily well if they have systems. But he went on to say that the extraordinary people really can't perform well consistently unless they've got systems. Just can't do it. We talk about involving your team. I like to use the analogy of football. I say that the left tackle needs to know what the right tackle's doing when the play starts. From a risk management standpoint, it really should go beyond the safety professionals here in the room. It really involves many people within your company. You should have your team assembled on the field and working through where everyone should go when the play starts, when the day of business starts. So who is on your team? Well, it's different for any company. Larger companies, you may have an entire C-suite of people. But you've got the risk managers, floor managers, your safety professionals, HR. Everyone should be involved in this process. Because again, it's just not about after a claim. So let's talk about a system that's been used to be able to find out where your blind spots are, both safety-wise and operationally. It's called Risk Score. And when you think of risk score, I want you to think of it like a credit score, but for your business. If you've got a good high credit score, what does it do to your mortgage rates? Lowers your mortgage rates, right? Same holds true in the insurance world. If you've got a good high risk score, end up with better programs. I'll talk about how this actually came about. In the insurance industry, there's a dynamic that exists that I bet exists in your world. In the insurance world, there are a lot of people in that industry who many times don't talk to each other. You've got claims people, you've got underwriters, you've got loss control people, and then you've got the medical community, the legal community. So in doing the research for my book, basically what we did was we took the lids off all those silos and dumped everyone into the same silo, got everyone talking to each other. And we started with what was probably over 250 questions, boiled them down to 200 questions, down to 150, and then ultimately boiled them down into 67. We had 31 different insurance companies involved in this process of what they thought were best practices. And again, in our experience, those who end up having good risk scores have done better in the process. I'm going to share with you some case studies here. But let me ask you this. Who here has raised 16-year-olds in your household or are fixing to raise 16-year-olds? God bless you. God love us, right? I've had 3 of my own. Well, remember when your son or daughter turns 16 or when your son or daughter does turn 16, if you've got proof that they had a B+ average and had gone through driver training, they get discounts or credits on their automobile insurance, right? Well, again, the same holds true in the insurance world. If you've got proof that you've got good policies and procedures in place, you're going to do yourself a favor. You may keep your coverage from being canceled, or you may get better pricing. And again, I'll just share with you 2 quick case studies. Who here has heard of the insurance company FCCI? Been around for a long time. I'm going to read you 2 sentences from a longer email I had gotten last year. It says, as you're aware, in reviewing the loss analytics for this insured, our underwriting team's initial position was to non-renew their workers' comp coverage. Their loss ratio this past year for their workers' comp is 260%. However, we've seen marked improvement following their deployment of your risk score program. So consequently, we have reversed our position and based upon today's information, accept terms next week. Another company saved over $50,000 in this process. Who here has heard of Zenith Insurance Company? Been around a long time, great company. Again, I'll just read you 2 sentences from another email from last year. Based on the insured's prior claims experience, we feel the original quote of $354,000 would be warranted. Upon request for reconsideration and reviewing the proactive work your client has done, including facets of the risk score process, we revised the renewal quote down to $304,000. Again, having systems help those 2 companies out immensely. I find that many business leaders are pretty competitive sorts. They like to know how they compare with others, and that's kind of really what risk score does. It shows you where you are, kind of as a benchmark, where you are today. You can see how you're improving as time goes on. Now, there was a report out by Fortune magazine back in 2012. In interviewing the people in that list, they said that 100% of those companies had risk assessments done. And they all had systems for how they were training people, what they were doing in managing their claims, and even how they were dealing with the HR process and hiring. So let's talk about the 5th costly mistake. It's probably one of the simplest or maybe the hardest, not taking action. Again, how many of us here, it may be easier to stay in status quo than to getting something done. How many of us here, again, would wait till we have a fire before we put an alarm system in? Let's not have that happen. So in summary, as I said from before, if you reduce your business risk as a company, you can and will increase your profitability as a company. But know your blind spots, but more importantly, do something about them. Now, statistically, these are some of the results that people have gotten by going through the risk score process. They've seen their average number of claims reduced by as high as 63%, actually even more. They've seen the cost of their claims go down 21%. And there's some folks who have some real challenges with turnover, and they've seen those reduced as much as 30%. Don't take my word for it. Paul Womrans runs a very successful company, Kenpat USA. When they were going through the process, said it helped him connect the dots, helped him really identify issues that they were having that were relevant to him and his company. He has a great safety culture, but he felt it actually helped it improve it even more. Then there was Jim Guinness, manufacturer. When they were first going through the program, he said it was just the tip of the iceberg. And again, profitability shot up $250,000. Again, had the same impact as adding over $13 million to his sales. His profitability was up 24% that year. And the math behind that, he was averaging over $318,000 in losses over a 3-year period of time. And in 1 year, going through risk score, ended up dropping their claims below $28,000. Now, in conclusion, we all know that many times in business we win in inches, or we can lose big by dropping the baton on some procedural thing that probably we should have had and gotten done. And many times risk management doesn't need to really cost you that much in the process. So what are next steps? Well, let me ask you more specifically, what are your next best steps? If you want great results, you need to have a plan. Now, earlier I promised you I would share with you how you can gain peace of mind by knowing what your operational blind spots are. More importantly, how to fix them. And Tim Bernardi and the Alliance for Central Florida Safety wanted to do something that was really amazing for you guys. They made special arrangements for you to be able to receive your risk score and have a complimentary strategy session with me, complimentary. It's normally $750, but for those in attendance today, again, it's simply part of the silver package that I mentioned to you earlier. Now, no different than the doctor-patient relationship my dad had with his patients, I have an absolute passion to be able to help companies reduce their risk. I'm a firm believer that really every business should really know where they stand, how they stack up with their peers, and really know where their blind spots are, the ones that are costing you money. Now, if you're interested and you would like to find out what your risk score is, just simply need you to go ahead and just take out a business card. And on the back of your card, all you simply need to do is put a number on the back of the card. And that number represents the approximate number of employees that are in your company. My staff needs that, along with what's on the front of your card, in order to be able to send you out a customized link to the assessment. And you're going to get that link within the next 24 hours. But this is what's important. The link is only going to last for 3 days. Now, the risk score is very easy to take. It takes less than 10 minutes. Answers are very easy. It's yes, no, or unsure answers. And I would say when you complete it, as soon as you hit the submit button, you're going to automatically get your results right then and there. Now, getting your numbers is really a good thing, but really more important than that, it's really understanding what's behind those numbers. That's what's really critical. Now, some of you already instinctively know that you probably have some issues, and that's really where the educational strategy session comes in. And if you're interested in that, on the back of your card, you simply need to go ahead and put an SS on the back of your card. And the strategy session basically is going to help provide you in finding out where your blind spots are. Now, there is one catch. Because there's really approximately 500 people here in the audience, and I only have 50 slots available, I'm going to go ahead and provide the educational strategy session for those 50 people that qualify. And to qualify, you need to be a leader or a key manager within your company or have the ability to involve them in your strategy session. Now, some of you may be thinking right now, I really would like to get my results, but I don't want to be sold anything. And I'm going to tell you flat out, that is not what this is about. It's not my style. My intent is for you to walk away understanding really what your blind spots are, but more importantly, how to fix them. And even if we never talk after the strategy session, you're going to come away with really a lot of valuable information, especially what 31 different insurance companies thought were best practices in the industry. So again, to reconfirm, you would get your link within 3 days. And again, you want to take it right away as soon as you get it. You may want to check your spam filters, simply because we may have some people on a waiting list. And I'll promise I will send you an email letting you know if you are on that waiting list so you know where you stand. Now, all the results that we talked about earlier in the testimonies, they all came from people who were going through that process, taking the risk score and having the assessment. If you're interested, make sure you turn your card in to one of my staff there on the corner of the room. Corinne, raise your hand. If you're interested, just hand your card to her on your way out the door. But in closing, we all know that accidents are waiting to happen. Let's not have them happen on your watch. It's been an honor to be here with you today. I'll be around to answer any questions that you may have. Be safe. God bless. Take care. Thank you.